And then we got Stephanie White. The one thing that was deadly in the Indiana Fever's arsenal was the pick and roll game between Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. You heard me say it. Stockton and Malone style. Stephanie White even said Stockton and Malone style. Before she even got hired, I was talking about John Stockton to feeding Karl Malone, and it was deadly.
That's not analysis. That's a man watching a franchise dismantle its own championship blueprint in real time. The Stockton and Malone comparison wasn't hype. It was the one unstoppable action the Indiana Fever had. And 14 games into the Stephanie White era, it's gone, vanished. Replaced by a system that's pushing the league's biggest star further from the basketball.
We have signed a guard, Bree Hall, to a player developmental contract. We have signed a guard, Bree Hall. I got nothing against Bree Hall, but it's a guard. I mean, we needed guards like we need to catch rabies. I mean, seriously. Like we all need the swine flu is how we needed a guard.
Bree Hall, player developmental contract. Another guard added to a roster already drowning in guards. The same contract slot they could have used on Kate Martin, the rebounder, the glue piece, the rim-running forward this team desperately needs. Instead, the front office doubled down on the position of greatest surplus and ignored the position of greatest weakness. And the result showed up on the glass against an inferior opponent.
How about Stephanie White? Talking about the two-man game is now gone with the wind.
To that point, I've watched a lot of Aaliyah Boston and Unrivaled even coming into this, and she is such a powerhouse that I think, like, I know she's going to be happy to have Caitlin back because that was one of the high targets in the league of that two-man game. So what does that look like now? Even Raven moving Caitlin off the ball, having a two-man game with Aaliyah Boston, like, you have a lot of weapons, and people sometimes don't realize, like, that's when, like, the coaches now, it's your job to mesh that whole thing together and make it work.
Listen to that defense of the two-man game. Even outside voices see it. Aaliyah Boston was an all-star last season, a former Rookie of the Year, a powerhouse in the paint who returned from Unrivaled in elite condition. The pick and roll with Caitlin Clark was producing roughly 1.1 points per possession last year, one of the most efficient actions in the entire league. Defenses had no answer. So why would any coach abandon that?
Work.
Yeah, I think creating space for C and AB to do what they do in the two-man game, you probably aren't going to see it necessarily on the first side of the floor anymore. Everybody's game plan is ready for that. I think playing through AB as a hub and inverting some of those actions. I mean, she showed last year that she can be a point forward, so to speak. I mean,
You literally 14 games. The whole league's ready for that. No, they're not. Stop it. Christ.
He handled a lot of our ball handling duties with Caitlin off the floor. We want to.
There it is, the justification. Creating space for Kelsey Mitchell. And let's be clear about Mitchell. She's a career 17-plus points per game scorer, a legitimate bucket getter, one of the most dynamic guards in the WNBA. Nobody is questioning her talent. The question is structural. When you reorganize an offense to feature your third option, you don't elevate the third option, you diminish the first two. Caitlin Clark led the league in assists last season at 8.4 per game. Aaliyah Boston shot 57% from the field. Those numbers don't happen by accident. They happen because of the action this coaching staff just threw in the trash.
What? Not only that, but by all means, send your coach in to do an interview with one of the biggest Caitlin Clark haters on the planet. I'm gonna use a word you don't hear very often anymore. Cahoots. Are you motherfuckers all in cahoots together? Y'all got that CBA and said, nah, we're good.
Now the broadcast partners are paying attention. The WNBA signed an 11-year media rights deal in July 2024, worth approximately $2.2 billion across Disney, NBC, and Amazon. That valuation was built on one number. Caitlin Clark drew an average of 1.2 million viewers per Fever game in 2024, with multiple games crossing 2 million. The 2024 finals between the Liberty and Lynx averaged just under 1 million viewers for Game 5. The economics of this league are now built on the assumption that Clark generates that audience. Take her off the ball, reduce her touches, change her role, and the entire foundation of that media deal starts to wobble.
We got it now. I hate to break it to you. The one thing you better be concerned about is that media rights deal. Because there are ways that networks can go back to leagues and say, we're not getting what we signed up for. Uh-oh. And then they got to start giving, oh shit, you're not delivering the ratings we were hoping to get. Because the advertisers are going to be like, these aren't the ratings we signed up for. Well, no shit. You got Caitlin Clark playing off the ball, and a third of the people's tuning in.
Empty seats. Read that again. The Fever drew a sellout in nearly every road arena last season. Washington moved their home games against Indiana to Capital One Arena, capacity 20,000, and sold it out twice. Las Vegas, Atlanta, Phoenix, Dallas all reported record gates whenever Indiana came to town. So when resale prices drop and unsold inventory shows up on secondary markets, that's a warning siren. Advertisers paid premium rates on the assumption of a certain product. The product they were promised was Caitlin Clark running the offense with Aaliyah Boston as her primary screener. The product being delivered is something else entirely.
People were not willing to pay up to resellers to buy those tickets. This was Stephanie White when she got hired.
Anticipate what one another was going to do, how they facilitated with one another. But there's so much room for growth. You know, and when you think about a Stockton and Malone, right? You think, I know you guys are too young for that reference. But when you think about the great point guards and post players that our game, not just our league, but our game has seen, they are going to go down in history as the greatest. And I'm excited about the anticipate what.
Okay.
There she is, 8 months ago, selling the Stockton and Malone vision. Same coach, same player references, same promise. Fast forward to today, and that promise has been buried inside 14 games of a regular season. The question isn't whether Stephanie White believed it when she said it. The question is what changed, because the personnel didn't change. Aaliyah Boston is still here. Caitlin Clark is still here. The only variable that shifted is the system being imposed on them.
I mean, did they send you in undercover to try to kill her career at this point? I mean, all this conspiracy stuff, remember how many conspiracies have turned out to be real? That everybody thought everybody was crazy? I mean, what is happening here? This is wild shit, to be honest with you. And I swear to God, if the Pacers ownership, I have been long since saying there's no way they will ever let Caitlin Clark get away, because any legit owner will fire scorch nuclear earth before they let that marketing juggernaut walk out of their franchise and go somewhere else.
Herb Simon is 91 years old. The Simon family has owned the Pacers organization since 1983 and acquired the Fever in 2008. By every public reporting from Forbes and Sportico, the Fever franchise valuation has more than tripled since Clark was drafted first overall in April 2024. Some estimates now place the franchise above $400 million, a number unthinkable for any WNBA team 18 months ago. That value is not abstract. It is directly attributable to one player, and the people running basketball operations are making decisions that put that valuation at risk every single night.
Boy, and we're 0-1. One home game to an inferior team, you just dropped it. Yes, they're an inferior team. Oh, well, they hit a bunch of open shots. No shit. Because your defensive guru couldn't come up with a plan. So they got open shots. That's the Fever's fault. Them getting an open shot is yeah. Lack of length. Oh my God. What the? Let's sign another guard. Oh, they're stopping the Stockton Malone game. They didn't even touch it and you took it away. Ain't no way.
One home loss to an inferior opponent, out-rebounded. Open shots conceded all night. And the front office response is to sign another guard. Let's stack the actual evidence against the rhetoric. The roster currently lists Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Sydney Colson, Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, and now Bree Hall. That is 6 guards on a 12-player roster. Meanwhile, the frontcourt rotation behind Aaliyah Boston is thin enough that Damaris Dantes was forced into significant minutes last season at age 33. The rebounding numbers tell the story bluntly. Indiana finished 11th out of 12 teams in defensive rebounding rate in 2024. They allowed the 3rd most second-chance points in the league. None of those problems get solved by adding another perimeter player.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.
Here's what makes this all converge into something genuinely alarming for Fever fans. The pick-and-roll abandonment is not a basketball decision in isolation. It is a philosophical statement. Stephanie White is a coach with a defensive identity, built her reputation in Connecticut on defensive scheme and physical play. That's a respectable basketball worldview. But it does not match the roster construction. You don't have Caitlin Clark, the most prolific creator in college basketball history, and design an offense around motion principles that minimize her decision-making touches. You don't have Aaliyah Boston, an elite role threat with soft hands and finishing instincts, and stop putting her in the action that maximizes those skills. The injury concerns add another layer. The reported groin and hip flexor issues, the back compensation discussed by White herself, the unusual conditioning routines mentioned in recent interviews. Players don't enter the blue zone, whatever that phrase even means in basketball parlance, unless something is structurally off. Combine that with reduced on-ball reps, and you have a recipe for either a healing player being misused or an injured player being mismanaged. Neither scenario reflects well on the people making these calls. The Kelsey Mitchell elevation tells you what the coaching staff actually believes about the hierarchy. When you reorganize spacing and actions to free up your shooting guard, you are signaling that your shooting guard is the offensive priority. Mitchell shot 41% from 3 last season. She is excellent. She is also not the player drawing 2 million viewers per broadcast. The Bree Hall signing confirms a front office that is either disconnected from the basketball operation or aligned with a vision that doesn't include maximizing the franchise's centerpiece. Either explanation is a problem. And then there is the media component, sending the head coach to friendly platforms while declining harder questions, abandoning a signature action without explanation, watching the offense produce a third of the audience while the broadcast partners signed 11-year commitments based on a different product. All of this compounds. Caitlin Clark is 24 years old. She has 8 years left on her current rookie deal before unrestricted free agency under the new collective bargaining framework being negotiated right now. The CBA negotiation itself adds urgency. If the Players Association secures the larger revenue share they're pushing for, and if Clark continues generating the audience numbers she's generating, the math becomes simple. The most valuable player in the league will eventually have leverage to choose her destination. Franchises that mismanage that window do not get it back. The Pacers ownership group has shown with the men's team a willingness to act decisively. They moved on from Nate McMillan. They restructured around Tyrese Halliburton. They made the Pascal Siakam trade. There is precedent for accountability inside this organization. The question is whether that accountability reaches the women's basketball operation, or whether Herb Simon's age and his presumed delegation to subordinates has created a vacuum where decisions like the Bree Hall signing happen without scrutiny. Because here's the bottom line. You can rebuild a roster, you can fire a coach, you can restructure a front office, but you cannot replace a generational draw. Caitlin Clark exists once. The Fever drafted her, the league marketed around her, the broadcast deals were signed on her shoulders. And right now, the franchise that hit the lottery is making decisions that look like they were designed by people who don't understand what they won. So here's the question for Fever fans, for WNBA fans, for anyone watching this league at the most important inflection point in its history. Is this a coach finding her footing in a difficult job, or is this a franchise actively squandering its golden ticket? Pick a side. Drop your verdict in the comments. Tell me whether Stephanie White makes it to the All-Star break. Tell me whether Bree Hall is the last bad signing or the first of many. And tell me what you think Herb Simon needs to do, because at 91 years old, somebody around him needs to be reading the room. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll keep tracking every move this front office makes, because right now, every move matters.